I found them dying on my doorstep during the worst blizzard Andalusia had seen in 50 years. Three massive wolves whose eyes held something I recognized immediately: the desperate plea of the abandoned. Hey, family, quick word for you. If life has stripped you bare, humiliated you publicly, and made you question your worth, I want you to hear this. Your value was never determined by those who failed to see it. The pain you're carrying right now, that deep ache of being rejected, dismissed, or cast aside by someone who was supposed to cherish you, is valid. And it's okay to feel every bit of it. You're not weak for hurting. You're human for feeling. But here's the truth they hoped you'd never discover. Their blindness to your worth says everything about them and absolutely nothing about you. The person who broke you, who humiliated you, who chose cruelty when they could have chosen compassion. They will one day wake up and realize what they lost. But by then, you'll be so far ahead, so healed. Every tear you've cried in secret, every night you've endured alone, every moment you chose to keep going when giving up seemed easier will be rewarded. They're going to bloom in ways that will shock everyone who underestimated you. I'm here because of you, and I've stayed consistent because you keep watching, correcting, and supporting me. Let's keep growing together. If this resonated with you, drop a thank you in the comments section. You're not alone in this journey. Now let me tell you how three frozen wolves taught me that some rejections are actually rescues in disguise. Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Please tell us where you're watching from. It matters so much to me. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, share this with your friends, and drop your perspectives in the comments section below. Your voices make this community what it is. My name is Estela, and 6 months ago, my mate Rodrigo stood before our entire pack in the village square of San Mateo del Valle and rejected me. He said the words that every Omega fears hearing. He called me weak, incomplete, unworthy of bearing his mark or his children. The pack elders nodded, his mother smiled, and just like that, I became invisible. They exiled me to this cabin in the Sierra Nevada mountains with nothing but the clothes on my back and a month's worth of supplies. Rodrigo's final words still echo in my memory. You'll learn humility out here, Estela. Maybe the mountain cold will teach you what I couldn't. I didn't understand what he meant. I had always been humble, quiet. I kept my head down and my thoughts to myself. I did everything an Omega was supposed to do. But none of it mattered. The rejection bond severed something inside me that I'm still trying to name. For 6 months, I survived alone. I learned to chop wood with hands that blistered and bled. I learned to hunt small game with traps I built from memory and instinct. I learned that silence isn't always loneliness, and loneliness isn't always weakness. The mountain taught me things the pack never could. It taught me that I was stronger than the story they told about me. But I never expected the mountain to send me 3 dying wolves on the coldest night of winter. The blizzard hit without warning. One moment the sky was clear and star-filled. The next, the wind was screaming through the pine trees like a wounded animal. Snow fell so thick I couldn't see 5 feet beyond my window. I secured the shutters, fed the fire, and wrapped myself in every blanket I owned. That's when I heard it. A sound that cut through the howling wind. A scratching at my door. Weak, desperate, almost human in its pleading. I should have been afraid. Wolves don't come to doors. They don't ask for help. But something deeper than fear moved through me. Something that recognized suffering because it had lived inside that suffering for half a year. I opened the door. 3 wolves collapsed across my threshold. Massive creatures, far larger than any normal wolf. Their fur was matted with ice and blood. Their breathing came in shallow, rattling gasps. One had a gash across its shoulder, Another's back leg bent at an unnatural angle. The third, the largest, had eyes that locked onto mine with an intelligence that froze me in place. They were shifters. I knew it instantly. And they were dying. Every instinct screamed at me to close the door. These weren't my pack. They were strangers. Possibly dangerous. Definitely a complication I didn't need. But I looked at those eyes, at that desperate need, and I saw myself 6 months ago. Rejected, abandoned, left to freeze. I made a choice that would change everything. I dragged them inside one by one, my omega strength barely enough to move their massive bodies. I closed the door against the storm and turned to face 3 dying wolves in my tiny cabin. I had no medical training, no pack healer knowledge, just instinct and determination. What I didn't know was that saving them would reveal the truth about why I was really rejected, and that truth would burn my old life to the ground. I worked through the night while the blizzard raged outside, and somewhere between stopping the bleeding and setting broken bones, I realized these wolves were holding onto their animal forms like a shield against something far more dangerous than the cold. The largest wolf, the one with those impossibly intelligent eyes, watched me as I tended to his companions first. I could feel his gaze tracking every movement, every decision. It wasn't the look of a wounded animal. It was the assessment of a leader deciding whether to trust. I started with the one who had the shoulder gash. The wound was deep, clearly made by claws, not an accident. Someone had done this deliberately. I cleaned it with water I'd boiled earlier, working as gently as I could. The wolf whimpered, but didn't pull away. I used strips torn from my only spare shirt to bind the wound tight. The second wolf's broken leg required me to remember things my grandmother had taught me before she passed. How to feel for the break. How to align the bone. How to splint it with wood and cloth so it could heal straight. My hands shook the entire time. One wrong move and I could make it worse. But the wolf lay perfectly still, as if it understood I was its only chance. By the time I finished with the second wolf, the sky outside was beginning to lighten. The storm had passed, and the largest wolf, the one I'd saved for last, began to shift. I should have been terrified. I should have run, but exhaustion had stripped away my capacity for fear. I simply watched as fur became skin, as paws became hands, as the wolf's face restructured itself into the features of a man. He was older than Rodrigo, maybe in his late 30s, with dark hair streaked with silver and a scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw. His eyes, even in human form, held that same piercing intelligence, and he was looking at me like I was a puzzle he'd finally solved. "You're Estela," he said. His voice was rough, damaged by the cold. "Estela Moreno from the San Mateo del Valle pack." My blood went cold. "How do you know my name?" "Because we've been looking for you for 3 months." He tried to sit up and winced, his hand going to his ribs. I could see now that he had injuries I hadn't noticed in his wolf form, bruises that covered his torso, cuts that suggested a brutal fight. "Who are you?" I asked. "My name is Mateo Vega. I'm an alpha from the Northern Federation. These are my trackers, Vicente and Leonel." He gestured to the 2 wolves still in their animal forms. "And we came to San Mateo del Valle to find you because your rejection was illegal." The word hung in the air between us like a blade. Illegal. "That's not possible," I whispered. "The pack elders approved it. They witnessed the ceremony. Rodrigo had every right." "Rodrigo had no rights at all." Mateo's voice turned hard. "A mate cannot reject an omega on the grounds of weakness when that omega hasn't been given the chance to complete the lunar trials. It's pack law, ancient law. Your elders knew this. They helped him do it anyway." My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the floor beside him. Why would they do that? That's what we came to ask them. Matteo reached into the tattered remains of his pants and pulled out a waterproof pouch. Inside was a document, official-looking, with seals I didn't recognize. 3 months ago, the Federation received an anonymous tip that San Matteo del Valle had conducted an illegal rejection and that the Omega in question was being hidden. We investigated. What we found in the old pack records was interesting. He handed me the document. My hands trembled as I opened it. The words swam before my eyes, but certain phrases jumped out. Bloodline registry, genetic markers, rare gift classification. I don't understand, I said. You're not just an Omega, Estela. You're a lunar Omega, 1 in 10,000. Your bloodline carries a gift that only manifests under specific conditions. Matteo's eyes softened. You can neutralize an alpha's command voice. You can break compulsion. In the wrong pack, with a corrupt alpha, someone like you is the most dangerous thing that could ever exist. The room tilted. I gripped the document harder, creasing the paper. Are you saying Rodrigo rejected me because I'm powerful? I'm saying Rodrigo rejected you because his alpha, Lorenzo Ruiz, ordered him to. Because Lorenzo has been using his command voice to control pack decisions for years. He's been stealing from pack resources, manipulating votes, silencing dissenters. And the moment you came of age and the bond with Rodrigo was supposed to complete, Lorenzo realized what you were. He realized you could end everything he'd built. A sound escaped my throat. Not quite a laugh, not quite a sob. 6 months of believing I was worthless. 6 months of internalizing every cruel word. And all of it was a lie designed to protect a tyrant. So he had Rodrigo reject me and the elders exile me before I could figure out what I was capable of. Exactly. Matteo leaned back against the wall, exhaustion finally overtaking him. We went to San Matteo del Valle to investigate. Lorenzo found out. He sent in forces after us. We barely escaped. The blizzard separated us from our vehicle. We would have died if you hadn't... He stopped. His eyes met mine. And in that moment, I saw something I hadn't seen in 6 months. Respect. If you're still watching, please hit that subscribe button. I promise you, what happens next will show you exactly what happens when the rejected Omega stops running and starts reclaiming everything that was stolen from her. Trust me, you don't want to miss this. They tried to kill you to keep this secret, I said slowly. They tried. They failed. A grim smile touched Matteo's face. Because you saved us. And now, Estela Moreno, we're going to return the favor. We're going to help you take back everything Lorenzo and Rodrigo stole. Your mate bond. Your dignity. Your future. The fire crackled in the silence that followed. Outside, the sun was rising over the snow-covered mountains. Inside, something else was rising in me. Something that had been buried under shame and rejection. Something that tasted like fury and justice and long-delayed reckoning. Tell me everything, I said. Tell me exactly what I am and what I can do. Because if I'm going back to San Matteo del Valle, I'm not going back as the weak Omega they cast out. Matteo's smile widened. No, you're not. You're going back as the woman who's about to destroy a corrupt alpha and free an entire pack from his control. And that's when I knew. The 3 frozen wolves at my door weren't just survivors I'd saved. They were the answer to a question I didn't know I'd been asking. How do you fight back when the entire world has told you you're powerless? You find the proof that you never were. Over the next 3 days, while Vicente and Leonel healed enough to shift back into their human forms, Matteo taught me everything about what I was. And every revelation felt like waking up from a nightmare I didn't know I'd been living. Lunar Omegas appear maybe once in a generation, Matteo explained on the second morning. We sat by the fire while his trackers slept, their bodies still mending. The gift doesn't manifest until the Omega bonds with their true mate, but the markers are there from birth, in your blood, in your scent. An alpha who knows what to look for can identify you before you even know yourself. Lorenzo knew, I said. It wasn't a question. Lorenzo knew the moment you presented as Omega at 16. We found the test results in the old pack archives. He ran your blood work himself, kept it hidden from everyone, including your parents. Matteo pulled another document from his waterproof pouch. He's been planning your removal for 7 years, Estela, waiting until you were bonded to Rodrigo so the rejection would seem legitimate, personal, not political. I took the document. It was a laboratory report dated 3 weeks after my 16th birthday. My name at the top. And underneath, in clinical language that made my skin crawl, a genetic analysis that confirmed lunar omega markers with 98% certainty. My hands shook. My parents never knew? No one knew except Lorenzo and the pack doctor, Doctora Serrano. She's been complicit in this from the beginning. Matteo's voice was gentle but firm. She falsified your records, told your parents you were a standard Omega, made sure you never had access to your own medical files. I thought about Doctora Serrano, with her kind smile and her gentle hands. She'd delivered me. She'd treated every childhood illness. She'd been at my presentation ceremony, congratulating my mother, assuring her I was perfectly healthy. And all of it had been a performance designed to keep me ignorant of my own nature. What exactly can I do? I asked. You said I can neutralize command voice. What does that mean? Matteo shifted closer. An alpha's command voice works by overwhelming an omega's or beta's will. It's a frequency, a vibration that bypasses rational thought and triggers obedience. But lunar omegas produce a counter-frequency. When you're bonded and fully activated, you can't be commanded. And anyone standing near you can't be commanded either. You create a dead zone around yourself, where an alpha's power simply stops working. The implications crashed over me like a wave. That's why Lorenzo couldn't just kill me. If I died under suspicious circumstances, the Federation would investigate. But if Rodrigo rejected me legally, you'd be exiled, isolated, and eventually forgotten. Lorenzo could continue using his command voice to control the pack. Rodrigo could take a new mate, someone weaker, someone controllable, and you'd spend the rest of your life believing you deserved it. Matteo's jaw tightened. It's one of the cruelest tactics we've seen. Psychological warfare disguised as pack law. Vicente stirred from his place by the far wall. He'd shifted back into human form the night before. A lean man in his mid-20s, with burn scars on his arms and a quiet intensity in his eyes. Tell her about the others, he said, his voice hoarse. Matteo hesitated. That hesitation told me everything I needed to know before he even spoke. You're not the first, he said finally. We found records of 3 other lunar omegas in the region over the past 40 years, all of them rejected by their mates. All of them exiled. 2 died within a year under circumstances that were ruled accidental. The 3rd disappeared completely. No body ever found. The fire popped. Sparks drifted up toward the ceiling. I watched them rise and fade, and I felt something inside me shift, not break, harden. He was going to kill me eventually, I said. Probably. Once enough time had passed that no one would connect it to the rejection. Matteo met my eyes. You survived because you're stronger than he anticipated. You didn't break out here. You adapted. That scared him. That's why he sent enforcers after us, when he learned we were asking questions. He knew his timeline was collapsing. Lionel, the 3rd tracker, finally spoke from his makeshift bed near the window. He was the youngest, maybe 22, with copper-colored hair and a bandage still wrapped around his torso. The enforcers told us something before we fought them. They said Lorenzo has a contingency plan. If the Federation comes for him, he'll claim you attacked the pack, that you're unstable, dangerous. He's already been planting that narrative with neighboring packs. Of course he had. Lorenzo hadn't survived as a corrupt alpha for decades by being careless. He'd built layers of protection, lies upon lies upon lies. So even if I go back with proof, he'll twist it, I said. He'll make me the villain. Not if we expose him publicly. Not if we force him to use his command voice in front of witnesses who can testify to the Federation. Matteo leaned forward. That's where you come in. We need you to challenge him directly, in front of the entire pack. We need you to trigger his command voice and then neutralize it. Show everyone what he's been doing. Show them that his power only works because people like you have been systematically removed. My heart hammered against my ribs. You want me to go back to the place that destroyed me and face the alpha who orchestrated my rejection, alone, and count on a power I've never used before to protect me. Not alone, Vicente said quietly. We'll be there. The Federation will be there. You'll have backup. And if it doesn't work? If my gift doesn't activate in time? Matteo's expression turned grim. Then Lorenzo will command you to stop, and you won't be able to resist, and he'll have you arrested for disrupting pack peace. He might even have you executed as a warning to anyone else who challenges him. The silence that fell was heavy with the weight of that reality. This wasn't a story with guaranteed victory. This was a gamble with my life as the stakes. But then again, staying here was a gamble too. Eventually, Lorenzo would send someone to finish what the blizzard had started. I could keep running, keep hiding, or I could fight back with the only weapon I had: the truth. I thought about my parents, still living in San Mateo del Valle, still believing their daughter had been rejected for being weak. I thought about other young Omegas in the pack who might be tested, identified, and marked for removal just like I had been. I thought about Rodrigo, who'd looked me in the eyes and called me unworthy when he knew, he had to have known, that he was reading from a script Lorenzo had written. When do we leave? I asked. Matteo smiled. It was the smile of a man who'd been hoping for exactly that answer. As soon as we're strong enough to travel. 3 days, maybe 4. That gives us time to prepare you, to teach you how to recognize your gift when it activates, how to channel it, how to protect yourself if things go wrong. And what do I do when I see Rodrigo again? The question came out smaller than I intended, more vulnerable. Because beneath all the anger and the plans for justice, there was still that wound, still that part of me that remembered loving him before he became my executioner. You look him in the eye, Matteo said softly, and you show him exactly what he threw away. You show him that his greatest mistake wasn't rejecting you. It was believing you'd stay rejected. Outside, the mountain wind picked up. Snow began to fall again, softer this time, like the sky was exhaling. Inside the cabin, 3 wounded trackers and 1 rejected Omega began planning the kind of confrontation that would either free an entire pack or end in blood. But I wasn't afraid anymore. Fear was a luxury I'd burned through during 6 months of survival. What I felt now was clarity, purpose, and beneath it all, something that felt dangerously close to hope. They'd tried to erase me. Instead, they'd forged me into exactly the weapon they feared. We returned to San Mateo del Valle on a Tuesday morning, exactly 10 days after I'd found 3 dying wolves on my doorstep, and the look on Rodrigo's face when he saw me walking through the village square made every moment of fear worth it. The journey down from the mountains had taken 2 days. Matteo and his trackers had contacted the Federation, And now we had official witnesses traveling with us. 3 Federation officers in their formal uniforms, carrying documentation that gave them authority to investigate any pack in the region. Lorenzo couldn't dismiss them. He couldn't command them. And he couldn't make me disappear with the entire Federation watching. The village looked exactly as I remembered. The same stone houses with their terracotta roofs. The same church with its bell tower overlooking the square. The same fountain where I'd played as a child, back when I still believed the world was fair and good. But I wasn't that child anymore. I was something else entirely, something Lorenzo had created by trying to destroy me. We entered the square at noon when we knew the pack would be gathered for midday meal. Conversations stopped, heads turned. I watched the shock ripple through the crowd like a stone dropped in still water. There was my mother, her hand flying to her mouth. My father standing frozen beside her. Doctora Serrano, her face going pale. And Rodrigo standing next to Lorenzo on the steps of the pack house, his eyes widening with something that looked like terror. Good. He should be terrified. Estela Moreno has returned to San Mateo del Valle under Federation protection, Mateo announced, his alpha voice carrying across the square without being a command. She's here to address crimes committed against her by this pack's leadership. Alpha Lorenzo Ruiz, you're required by Federation law to grant her an audience before the assembled pack. Lorenzo stepped forward. He was a big man, broad-shouldered, with grey hair and eyes like chips of ice. He'd always seemed so powerful to me, untouchable. Now I saw him clearly for the first time. A bully, a tyrant, a man whose entire reign depended on people never realizing they could say no. This is highly irregular, Lorenzo said, his voice smooth, diplomatic. Estela was rejected by her mate through proper channels. The elders witnessed the ceremony. She has no grounds to. She has every ground, one of the Federation officers interrupted. A woman named Capitana Reyes, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense. We have evidence that the rejection was conducted under false pretenses, evidence that you, Alpha Ruiz, manipulated pack law to remove a lunar omega who posed a threat to your authority. The crowd erupted, voices overlapping, denials, questions, confusion. I watched Lorenzo's face, saw the micro-expression of panic before he locked it down. He was good at this. He'd been playing this game for decades. That's absurd, Lorenzo said. He turned to address the pack, his voice taking on that subtle edge I'd heard 1,000 times before. The edge that meant obey. Estela was rejected because she was weak. Everyone here witnessed it. There's no conspiracy. The Federation has been misled by false testimony. I felt it then. The command voice woven into his words. Subtle enough that most people wouldn't consciously recognize it, but strong enough to make them doubt their own perceptions, to make them agree with him, even if the logic didn't follow. I watched pack members nodding, saw doubt creeping into their expressions. And I felt something else, a vibration in my chest, like a tuning fork had been struck somewhere deep inside me. The gift Mateo had described, the counter-frequency. It was activating. "You're lying," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the noise like a knife. And I can prove it. I walked forward. Mateo and his trackers flanked me. The Federation officers stayed close. Every step felt like walking through fire. But I kept my spine straight, and my eyes locked on Lorenzo. "Tell them the truth, Alpha Ruiz," I said. "Tell them what I really am. Tell them why you falsified my medical records. Tell them about the other lunar omegas you've removed from this pack over the past 40 years. Lorenzo's eyes narrowed. "I don't know what lies these outsiders have fed you, girl, but you're embarrassing yourself. Go back to your cabin. Accept your rejection with dignity." Girl, not omega. not by my name. Girl. The disrespect was calculated, designed to diminish me in front of everyone, to remind the pack that I was nothing, but I felt the frequency in my chest growing stronger, warmer, like a second heartbeat. Tell them, I repeated, or I'll make you tell them. Lorenzo's face went hard. You dare threaten your alpha, in front of the entire pack? His voice rose, taking on that commanding edge again, stronger this time. Kneel, Estela. Kneel and apologize for this disruption, or I'll have you removed by force. The command hit me like a wave. I felt it trying to override my will, trying to force my knees to bend, trying to make me submit. Around me, I saw pack members dropping to their knees automatically, responding to the bleed-over effect of Lorenzo's power. Even some of the Federation officers swayed. But I didn't kneel. The frequency in my chest flared bright and hot. It rose up through my throat, and when I spoke, my voice carried a resonance I'd never heard before. Clear, unshakable, free. No. One word. But it shattered Lorenzo's command like glass. Pack members gasped as they found themselves suddenly able to stand, able to think clearly, able to question. I saw the moment they realized what had just happened, the moment they understood that Lorenzo's power had just failed for the first time in their lives. Lorenzo staggered back a step. His face went white. That's not possible. She's a lunar omega, Matteo said, stepping forward. Her gift neutralizes command voice. Every order you've given while she's been standing here has been stripped of its compulsion. Your pack is hearing you clearly for the first time in years. So I'll ask again, Alpha Ruiz. Tell them the truth. The square was silent. Every eye was on Lorenzo. I watched him calculate his options, watched him realize he had none. The Federation was here. His power was negated, and his pack was waiting for an answer. Rodrigo broke first. He stepped away from Lorenzo, his face twisted with something between guilt and relief. It's true, he said. His voice cracked. Lorenzo ordered me to reject Estela. He told me she was dangerous, that she'd destroy the pack if we bonded. He said it was my duty to protect everyone by casting her out. He looked at me, and I saw tears in his eyes. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought you were the threat. I'm so sorry, Estela. I'm so sorry. My mother's sob carried across the square. My father caught her as her knees buckled. Around us, pack members began shouting, demanding answers, demanding justice. The carefully constructed lies were crumbling, and Lorenzo had nowhere left to hide. You manipulated my mate Bond, I said, walking up the steps until I stood face to face with Lorenzo. You stole 7 years of my life. You exiled me to die. You killed other Omegas to protect your power. The frequency in my chest burned steady now, a constant presence. Your reign is over, Alpha Ruiz. The Federation will investigate every decision you've made, every order you've given, and this pack will finally be free. Lorenzo's face contorted with rage. He lunged for me, his hand going for my throat. But Matteo and Vicente were faster. They caught him, forced him to his knees. The mighty Alpha, brought down by the Omega he'd tried to erase. Capitana Reyes stepped forward with restraints. Lorenzo Ruiz, you're under arrest for manipulation of pack law, conspiracy to commit murder, and abuse of Alpha authority. You'll be tried before the full Federation Council. As they led him away, Lorenzo's eyes met mine one last time. There was no remorse there, no acknowledgement of the lives he'd destroyed, just fury that he'd been caught, that I'd survived. I turned to face the pack, my pack, the people who'd watched me be rejected and said nothing, the people who'd believed the lies because it was easier than questioning their alpha. I should have felt triumphant, victorious. But all I felt was tired. I don't know if I can forgive this, I said quietly. I don't know if I can come back here and pretend the last 6 months didn't happen, but I hope you'll do better. I hope you'll protect the next Omega who's different, who's powerful, who threatens the comfortable lies you tell yourselves. My mother pushed through the crowd. She reached for me, her face wet with tears. Mija, please. We didn't know. If we'd known. You should have questioned, I said, but I let her hug me, because she was still my mother. And forgiveness, I was learning, wasn't a single choice. It was 1,000 small choices made over time. Rodrigo approached slowly, carefully, like I was a wild animal that might bolt. Estela, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I need you to know. The bond, it never broke for me. Even when I said the words, even when I tried to sever it, something in me knew it was wrong. I felt you out there in the mountains, every day, every night. I felt your pain. I looked at the man who'd been my mate, who I'd loved, who'd destroyed me with words another man had written. And I felt nothing. No love, no hate, just emptiness where the bond used to live. The bond is broken, Rodrigo, I said. What you feel is guilt, not connection. And that's something you'll have to live with, not me. I turned and walked back to where Matteo stood. He offered his arm, and I took it, grateful for the solid strength of someone who'd chosen to help me when he had no obligation to do so. As we left the square, I heard the pack behind us beginning to talk, beginning to question, beginning, finally, to wake up. 3 months after I walked out of San Mateo del Valle for the second time, I stood on the ridge overlooking my cabin and realized something that would have broken the old Estela's heart. I didn't want to go back. The Federation trials had concluded 2 weeks ago. Lorenzo was stripped of his Alpha title and sentenced to 20 years in a Federation detention facility. Doctora Serrano lost her medical license and faced criminal charges for her role in falsifying records. The pack was under temporary Federation oversight while they elected new leadership through a process that, for the first time in decades, didn't involve command voice manipulation. My parents had written me letters. Long, heartbroken letters, full of apologies and pleas for me to come home. Rodrigo had written too, though his letters remained unopened in a box under my bed. Some wounds needed time, some needed distance, and some, I was learning, just needed to be acknowledged and then released. But I wasn't alone on this mountain anymore. Matteo had asked if he could stay while the Federation completed their investigation. Vicente and Leonel had asked if they could stay to finish healing. And somehow, 3 days had turned into 3 weeks, had turned into 3 months, and my tiny cabin had transformed into something I'd never expected. A home filled with people who saw my worth without needing to be convinced of it. "You're thinking too loud," Matteo said, coming to stand beside me. He'd healed completely, though the scar on his face remained, a permanent reminder of the night we'd all nearly died. "I can hear it from inside," I smiled. "I'm thinking about choices, about how 6 months ago I thought my life was over because one man rejected me, and now I'm standing here realizing that rejection was the best thing that ever happened to me." That's the spirit of a survivor talking. Matteo's voice was warm, approving. Though I'd argue it wasn't the rejection itself that saved you, it was what you chose to do with it. He was right. The rejection had been cruel, calculated, designed to break me. But somewhere between the exile and the frozen wolves and the confrontation in the square, I'd made a choice. Not to be broken. Not to accept the story they'd written about me. To survive first, and then to fight back. "The Federation offered me a position," I said. I'd been holding this information close for days, unsure how to feel about it. They want me to work with them identifying other lunar omegas, teaching them about their gifts before corrupt alphas can remove them, building a network of protection. Matteo turned to look at me fully. That's incredible, Estela. That's exactly the kind of work that changes lives. When do you start? I haven't accepted yet. I met his eyes. Because there's something else I've been thinking about. Something bigger. Below us, I could see Vicente and Leonel working on the expansion we'd started last week. My small cabin was becoming a larger lodge, with room for guests, for meetings, for a community I was only beginning to imagine. What if we didn't just identify lunar omegas? I said slowly, the idea taking shape as I spoke it aloud. What if we created a sanctuary? A place where any omega who's been rejected, cast out, or abused could come for safety and training, where we teach them they're not powerless just because someone told them they were. Matteo was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, that rare, full smile that transformed his entire face. You want to build a pack? Not a traditional pack, I clarified quickly. No alpha hierarchy, no command voice, just a community of people who've been told they're less than and who've decided to prove that wrong. We could offer shelter, education, skill training, help them find their gifts, whatever those gifts might be. A refuge, Matteo said, for the rejected and the lost. For the survivors, I corrected, because that's what we all are. Survivors choosing to become something more, Vicente called up from below. Estela, Leonel's about to attempt cooking again. You might want to supervise before he burns down your new kitchen. I laughed. Leonel's cooking was legendarily terrible, a fact he acknowledged cheerfully while refusing to stop trying. It was one of the small, ordinary joys I'd discovered in this new life. The freedom to laugh at mistakes without fear of punishment. The safety to try and fail and try again. I should go, I said, but I didn't move immediately. I stood there with Matteo, looking out over the mountains that had witnessed my breaking and my rebuilding. For what it's worth, Matteo said quietly, I think your sanctuary idea is brilliant. And if you need an alpha willing to live without exercising his command voice, willing to be part of something built on choice instead of compulsion, I'd be honored to help you build it. Something warm unfurled in my chest, not a mate bond. Not romantic love. Something simpler and perhaps more valuable. Partnership. Trust. The foundation of chosen family. I'll need to talk to the Federation, I said. Make sure they understand I'm not rejecting their offer, just expanding on it. The sanctuary could be a base of operations for the identification work. A training ground. They'll agree, Matteo said confidently. What you're proposing serves their mission. And after what you did in San Mateo del Valle, after you proved that lunar omegas can stand against corrupt alphas, they'd be fools not to support you. We walked back down to the cabin together. Inside, Leonel had indeed created some kind of smoking disaster in the kitchen, while Vicente laughed helplessly. The normalcy of it, the easy chaos of people living together without power plays or hidden agendas, still felt like a miracle. That night, after we'd salvaged dinner and Vicente had banned Leonel from the kitchen for a week, I sat by the fire and thought about the woman I'd been 6 months ago. The one who'd believed she was weak because her mate said so. The one who'd accepted exile as deserved punishment. The one who'd nearly let shame and isolation kill her before the cold ever could. She felt like a stranger now. Someone I'd once known, but had outgrown. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. The pack elected a new alpha today. A woman named Sophia Cruz. She's already implementing new protections for omegas. She said she was inspired by your courage. We're so proud of you, Mija. We hope you'll visit when you're ready. I stared at the message for a long time. Sophia Cruz had been a beta in the pack, quiet and competent, someone I'd barely known. Now she was Alpha, leading without command voice manipulation, building something better. The ripples of that confrontation in the square were spreading farther than I'd imagined. Maybe I would visit eventually. Maybe forgiveness was possible, given enough time and enough change. But not yet. Not while I was still building this new version of myself. I thought about Rodrigo too, though the thought no longer carried the weight it once had. I hoped he found peace. I hoped he learned to live with his choices. But his journey was no longer mine to witness or guide. Some paths diverge, and that's okay. That's necessary. You look peaceful, Matteo observed from across the fire. I feel peaceful, I admitted. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, doing exactly what I'm meant to do, not because someone commanded it or because tradition demands it, but because I chose it. That's power, Matteo said. Real power, the kind that can't be taken away. He was right. Lorenzo had tried to strip me of everything, my mate, my pack, my identity, my life. But he couldn't take my choices. He couldn't take my resilience. And in the end, those were the only things that mattered. Outside, snow began to fall again, soft and quiet, the mountain exhaling. Inside, the fire crackled, and my chosen family talked about plans for the sanctuary, about omegas who might need us, about a future we were building together from the ashes of our individual pasts. I am Estela Moreno. I am a lunar omega. I am a rejected mate who refused to stay rejected. I am a survivor who became a sanctuary builder. And I am finally, beautifully, completely free. If you've stayed with me through this entire journey, thank you. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. This channel exists because of you, because you see value in stories about resilience and reclamation, and refusing to accept the limitations others place on us. If this story resonated with you, if you've ever felt rejected or cast aside or told you are less than you are, I want you to know your story isn't over. Your rejection isn't your ending, it's your beginning. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Like this video if it moved you. And in the comments, tell me about a time you chose to rise instead of break. Share your strength with this community. We're building something here, all of us together. A space where survivors become warriors, where the rejected become sanctuary builders, where every ending is secretly a beginning we just couldn't see yet. I'll see you in the next story, family. Until then, remember, you were never as powerless as they needed you to believe. And your greatest revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be. Stay strong, stay free, and never, ever let anyone else write your story. When Estela Moreno opens her cabin door during the worst blizzard in 50 years, she finds 3 dying wolves collapsed in the snow. Exiled from her pack after a devastating rejection, she should let them freeze. Instead, she drags them inside and saves their lives, a choice that will unravel the lies that destroyed her. As the wolves shift into human form, Estela learns the truth. She's not weak. She's a lunar omega, 1 in 10,000. With a gift so powerful, her former alpha orchestrated her rejection to protect his corrupt reign. Her mate Rodrigo didn't cast her out because she was unworthy. He did it because she was the only one who could end decades of manipulation and control. Now, armed with proof and protected by the Northern Federation, Estela must return to the pack that rejected her and face the alpha who tried to erase her. With her newly awakened gift, she'll neutralize his command voice, expose his crimes, and show everyone what happens when you try to destroy a woman who refuses to stay broken. This is a story about betrayal and redemption, about surviving exile and building sanctuary. about discovering that sometimes rejection is the universe's way of redirecting you toward your true purpose. If you've ever been underestimated, cast aside, or told you weren't enough, this story will remind you that your greatest power often lives in the places others told you were weaknesses. Subscribe for more stories of resilience, reclamation, and the unstoppable strength of those who refuse to accept the stories others write about them.